Those of you with sharp eyes will notice that we're making a substitution right now because we're so talented here at Fiber Festival. Someone drops out because they're sick, and we can instantly conjure, as though from a bottle, another human being to stand in their place and give a presentation that's on the same topic. So we've managed to conjure you, Iohanna Nicenboim, design researcher, and she's in the Connected Everyday Lab with Elisa Gicardi, who was supposed to be here to present but is ill, at TUDelft. So take it away. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Does it work? Yeah? Okay. Yeah, so I came this morning to attend the conference, and then I got this text like, can you replace Elisa? And I was like, okay, this is a great opportunity. So I spent the last 3 hours preparing a talk, and hopefully it makes sense. And let's see how we relate it also to the panel. So what I will show you today is a bit of what we do at the Connected Everyday Lab, where I work with Elisa in Delft, and also some of my work. In my design work, I am interested in technology, and especially in connected devices, networked devices, and how they can challenge our understandings of objects and humans. So I will show you my project mainly, which is called Objects of Research, which I think is mostly about subjects of research, or this distinction between objects and things, when objects become things, and also when people and things become objects. So first, let me tell you about the Connected Everyday Lab, where I work. So we research with things, and I guess this is why Elisa was invited for this talk, because we try to research with things. We see them as co-ethnographers and co-designers. We ask this question: what if things would design things? What they would like to create, and it's an interesting environment to work. We work with machine learning specialists and ethnographers. And what we try to do is to gain a new perspective, a perspective of the things and their everyday life. So you can gain really interesting insights when you look through the eyes of things. In this case, for example, in a kind of weird ethnographic study, they put cameras, autographers, which are these cameras that can follow people together with sensors. They put them in objects, and what you get is a view on the life of an object. And this reveals really interesting, unexpected insights and also relationships between objects. And this is especially important in the Internet of Things, because not only people will interact with objects, but also objects independently. So this more complex material landscapes could be somehow revealed with this kind of studies. Some of the insights that can come out from this approach is, for example, to see that objects to see what are the activities that people do around objects, for example. So you can look at people not in terms of behavior, but more like in an inspirational way. For example, what people do while waiting for the kettle to boil. So you can see that some read the newspaper, some even exercise. So we cluster these activities, this kind of objects as things that make time. And another interesting insight from this approach is that you can see like the verticals, we call it, kind of what objects, what kind of relationships or how things appear in the house, that it means not looking only at practices. For example, normally designers would have the task to improve an experience, or improve an experience of having breakfast or shaving. And in this way, it's kind of looking vertically at practices or activities. But if you follow things, they actually can reveal horizontal. So they move across practices, and they kind of connect practices, human practices. Meaning that a kettle could be used to make coffee, but it could be also used to water the plants. So these are like the different practices where it moves. And some objects actually move a lot, and they're really interesting. For example, we saw that cups are used as kind of companions for people. They make coffee, and then they go with the cup everywhere in the house as a kind of friend. So these are the kind of insights that we get. And specifically, I work in a more, I guess, real life, grounded to down-to-earth project at the moment, which is resourceful aging. We want to design connected systems to empower elderly. So it's a really sensitive group. And we move away from this idea that old people are frail and passive and incompetent with technology. And we want to see how creative they are. And we see they are really creative with their everyday practices with objects, to see if this could inspire us to create kind of more technological objects that could fit these strategies. Normally, this is not what happens with design for the elderly. There are a lot of kind of solutionism. These ideas become inappropriate very quickly. For example, this lady that we visited, she showed us this bracelet that her daughter gave it to her, and it's to kind of track her, and it's kind of alarm. And she put it there, and I was wondering why. And she said that it's great to close the cabinet. The material affordances of that allows her to close the cabinet. So these are the kind of secret lives of objects that we want to uncover. And very often this is not obviously what the designers intend. So looking at misuse of objects in a new perspective, we can perhaps get some ideas for design. So that's the work that I'm doing as a researcher, but I also have some projects as a designer from the last years, and mainly they concern things. I am really interested in this term, and the relationship between objects and things, and this term has a long history in philosophy, especially Heidegger, I guess, talks about objects that become things when they can no longer function, when they break. And this is, by the way, something we observed very often in this project with the elderly, that many times people are more able to appropriate something when it's broken. So I like very much this concept. And Bill Brown, taking from this idea, also says that we begin to confront the thickness of objects when they break, which means it could be when your computer gets stuck or when the glass is broken, then you suddenly confront this as a thing. And he also says that we begin to confront the thickness of objects when they shed their socially encoded value and they become present to us in new ways. So hopefully this is what I do with my speculative design, critical design work, kind of to shed the socially encoded value of objects. So they appear to us in a new way, and perhaps this idea of being broken inspires us to look at them and us in a new way. So this is one of the projects I did. It's about rituals. It explores the relationship and contradictions we have with all devices, with all mobile phones and their afterlife. So there are a series of rituals that I created to mourn objects, to mourn mobile devices. We have lots of old mobile devices in our drawers. I'm sure you do too, and I was wondering why people keep them. And one of the reasons is because we are attached to them. We have a lot of memories inside, and also people don't know how to recycle them. So I came up with these 3 rituals which are based on mourning rituals from different cultures. So there is one for when the phone is broken, one for when it's replaced for a new one, and you have to erase the data. So this is what we came up with. And the last one is when it's stolen. So you need to kind of, kind of mourn this in a different way. Another project, it's called data domestication. I see a lot of overlaps with things that people have been talking about today, like rituals and also this idea of domestication this morning. And in this project, I was thinking, how will we domesticate data and sensors. Sensors are so tiny, and when we bring them home, so how we will adopt them in a more meaningful way. So I created a series of pet sensors. They are the kind of the containers, the cage of the bird in this case, which is an air quality bird cage in this case. And I don't know if you know, but animals were used before as measuring instruments. So miners used to go down the earth with a bird to know if the air quality was good. So kind of mimicking this idea, I created this cage. And I thought that, rather than receiving numbers, we could connect to this data in a more personal and open way, as if, we do with pets, that we know when something is wrong with very subtle cues. The last project I would like to show, and this is, I guess, the one that actually deals with this idea of challenging our understanding of objects and ourselves, is Objects of Research. It's a design fiction project, dystopian scenario about the Internet of Things. And I will show you these 4 artifacts that I created. But first, let me tell you why I think this technology could be interesting in this way, in this challenging us. When I started to research about the Internet of Things, this is one of the first diagrams that you find, and it's kind of very positively presenting the Internet of Things. So by 2020, things will be 50 billion. But for me, what was interesting is this transition that actually they trace the starting point of the Internet of Things in 2008, when the number of things connected to the Internet exceeded the number of people on Earth. So suddenly, when things connected to the Internet are more than us, I started to rethink our relationship with objects, and especially because they're not only growing in number, but they are becoming more powerful. They are more autonomous. They will be able, or they are able, to make their own decisions, or even suggest us what to do. And there are many risks, obviously, to that. Mine is also a kind of dystopia of the future. It's a bit different. I think today there are many risks of the IoT that we are discussing, like security and privacy. These systems are not very secure. Some of them can be hacked really easily. And there are other issues, other challenges which concern more perhaps the social aspects of it, which is discrimination. And one of them that I was particularly interested in is this idea that data is not only reflecting what we do, but also who we are. And we are quantifying ourselves, not only companies. So in this situation, I asked what would be our role, or what is our role in these systems. Bruce Sterling says that we have transformed from customers, he says, from customers that we were from companies, or users that we were on the internet, to just consumers, or even worse, participants of a surveillance platform. And I took this a bit farther, and I thought, actually, we are participants also of a surveillance platform, but we are also participants of experiments. This is currently happening. Companies do experiments with us. Facebook did that, and also OkCupid, they actually wrote a book about that. So we are being the subjects of these experiments. And for me, this was a very clear distinction between collecting data and doing experiments. Because imagine if your coffee machine would be collecting how much coffee you drink, that's one thing. But imagine if it could make an experiment with you, giving you a bit more coffee every day, and seeing how that impacts on your working life or on your sleeping patterns. So my question is really, who is the object in the Internet of Things? And especially, because this kind of technocratic approaches kind of erase the human. I like these drawings of patents where they depict the technology and the human is kind of looking really passive. I have a collection of these images. They're amazing. And in this case, it's even like there is no person there. It's like, okay, let's erase just what is not important. Let's show the car. And this is also something that in the 60s, for example, Super Studio claimed as being, in the future, dining tables accessorized with complementary humans. That's how they describe this set of tables. So I imagined a scenario which is pretty much not a future but a present, where the house is becoming a lab, objects are becoming services. This is a very common paradigm in IoT, and humans might be becoming the objects. So I illustrated these ideas with 4 prototypes. They are a bit different. I will show them quickly. The first one is terms and conditions, terms of service printer. I imagined, what if our houses in the future would have terms and conditions as the models, as the websites that we use, and I prototyped this with this little object that is constantly printing the terms of service of every device that we connect to your network. And obviously, there is no accept or decline button anymore. It's just printing. And it was really interesting because, just by prototyping this, well, first of all, I read the terms and conditions of some services like Google and Facebook, and yeah, it really struck me. And especially seeing people reading them when they come out of this printer, it's like a haiku poem somehow. So they have a different implication, especially when they are physical in this world. So the current sentences are based on Facebook and Google, and I also use them in workshops to more collaboratively work on these terms and see what would be terms that we want from services. Especially kind of working on these sentences, thinking instead of this license continues even you stop using our services, maybe more fair situations like this one. The second one is a toaster, very common object for the Internet of Things, to illustrate the Internet of Things. And this toaster is trying to find the perfect toast for you. It's using a common technique in marketing, which is the A/B test. And it's kind of a technique for optimization. So it's trying to find the perfect toast for you. Every morning you get 2 options, you select one that you like the most, and then it learns from that. The problem is that once it finds the perfect toast, you have to pay for it. So it's kind of based on these freemium models that we have online today. So as you notice, many of these objects, what they do is translate problems we have in the internet today online to objects, and it's a powerful way to make people ask questions about that and think what will be the internet the internet they want in their things. The third one is a scale. This is an actual object doing an experiment, research on people. I thought I needed to try that in a design. So it's a scale. You put your phone on top of this kind of rather prop object, like very simple object, and it shows you a number that is very close to your weight, but it's not so accurate. And I did an experiment with myself, and I tracked my weight and also annotated how much I think I weighed, and the difference was actually 1/2 kilo. So it's not that much, 1/2 kilo for a human understanding, but for a machine doing an experiment, that's a lot to play with. So it's showing you your weight and analyzing your tendencies over time to gain or lose weight in relation to the feedback that it gives you. And obviously there are 2 versions of this app. You can use the free version, which is doing the experiment, and you can also pay for the real information that it gives you, so if you can afford the truth, the real information. In the last one, I was interested in what kind of objects could exist in these ecosystems of data, because I think the challenge for the Internet of Things is not only connecting things to the internet, but also imagining which new objects could exist in these environments. And this is one of them, is a correlation display, correlation machine. It's not collecting data, but it's feeding from data of other objects in the house and correlating it. So it can find interesting correlations, like the side you sleep is correlated with the strength of your coffee. So you can learn something about your life, but it can also show you very spurious correlations, like your consumption of mozzarella is correlated with the films Nicolas Cage appeared in. And this is an actual correlation. I took them from a website that it shows all the correlations. This you see is not, it's slightly correlated. There are others that are much more, like spending on science, space and technology with suicides by hanging, strangulation and suffocation. This is strongly correlated. And this machine tries to prove, it knows that correlation is not causation, so it tries to prove one of the hypotheses by sending you apps, showing you ads, of one of these variables. So it chooses, for example, mozzarella, and is checking this hypothesis that maybe if you consume more mozzarella cheese, Nicolas Cage will appear in more films. So this is the last project I wanted to show you. And just to finish, I would like to highlight this idea that the Internet of Things could change everything, including ourselves. So I wanted, with these projects, to highlight the risk and challenges of adopting these technologies, but also the potential of things to decentralize the human role, the human perspective, and challenge our understanding of objects and ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Even though you've turned me off mozzarella cheese forever now, thanks for nothing. We have a question in the front here. Did you raise your hand? Oh, well, that was a false alarm. Does anyone have any questions for Johanna? I'm looking. I have a question about the future of the lab's work. So these are projects that you made in the Everyday Objects Lab at TUDelft, yeah?
No, actually, these ones
Your personal design practice?
Yeah, in Berlin.
Oh, okay. So then tell us maybe a bit about how this correlates with the kind of lab work and stuff, because I think probably for us, we're interested to hear a little bit about that as well.
Okay. So yeah, at the moment, as I said, we are working with elderly as a group, and so my personal kind of take on that is to think of new kind of interactions for connected environments, and I'm thinking how to collaborate with things, actually, to make systems that are more collaboratively, in the sense that so far the Internet of Things is plagued with these interactions where you use your mobile phone to as a remote control, so to control things. And I was thinking what would be a more collaboratively experience, like even this scale when suddenly two things become something else. So I'm really interested in this idea that things, as they move across practices, they become something else.
And then the machines are there to like sort of help us by tricking us a little bit, or like, yeah.
I guess, I mean, I think it could have like risks, but also perhaps interesting implications if we collaborate with machines. So in the case of aging and elderly, I think we are looking at the more positive sides of that.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks very much, Johanna.